definitely an issue for a lot of employers is not only attracting existing employees back to the workforce and growing the labor market, but what does that look like for the next 10 years on the new jobs that are being created that we may not even be aware of yet?
Welcome to Rise and Strive, where we empower you to take your next step in an ever-changing business landscape. Here's your host, Denise LeDuc-Frumy, President and CEO of the California Society of CPAs.
Hello, and welcome to Rise and Strive. Today, I have the pleasure of speaking with Jennifer Barrera, President and CEO of the California Chamber of Commerce. Jennifer has been part of CalChamber since 2020 and has served as Senior Policy Advocate and as Executive Vice President, overseeing the development and implementation of policy and strategy for the organization, as well as representing the CalChamber on legal reform issues. Prior to joining CalChamber, Jennifer worked at a statewide law firm that specializes in labor and employment defense. So thank you again, Jennifer, for taking time to be with us. And I'm personally just so happy to be having this conversation because you were one of the first people when I started in October that I talked to. And I think it was within week 2 or 3, but you were generous with your time. And I just really appreciated how welcoming you were. And since then, even how open you've been to working together. So thank you.
Thank you, Denise. And thank you so much for having me here today.
We're delighted. And I think you started October 1st officially as the CEO of the California Chamber.
Yeah, that's right.
Correct. And I think I think October 18th, I started in my role. So it was pretty close timing. But again, just happy to have you here with us. And just wanted to start out with just maybe tell us a little bit about CalChamber, the mission of the organization, and then kind of where your focus is, because there's been a lot of change over the last 2 years, and I'm sure you've had to pivot. The word of the last couple of years, you had to pivot to really move into a different direction and focus. So maybe share with us kind of what initiatives you're working on.
Sure. So the California Chamber of Commerce is the broadest employer-based organization at the state level, and we represent and advocate on behalf of employers at the legislative and regulatory agencies, obviously on pending bills and legislation or regulations that they're considering. And then we also have a compliance side of our organization as well that produces and provides human resource, labor, and employment compliance products for our employers here in California to help navigate some of the challenging laws that we have here in California, specifically on labor and employment issues. And so really, again, our mission is to help advocate on behalf of employers and really try to help them succeed here in California.
And some of I know when I was at I'm going to give a little plug here, at your event that you had June 1st. What was I can't remember the official name.
Yeah, every year we have our Capital Summit, which is where we bring together small businesses, other local chambers of commerce, some of our board members, other just business owners and employers in California to Sacramento. And we do a full day of policy briefings. And we also have our host breakfast, which is widely attended by over 1,000 different business owners and employers here in California, elected officials. Usually the governor speaks at that breakfast, although this year the lieutenant governor was kind and gracious enough to step in, given that the governor had COVID. But yeah, it's a big event, and we're very happy to see it back in person.
It was great. I'm going to give a plug here. If anyone hasn't been, they should definitely go, because I learned a lot there and just a wealth of information. And I've referred to those notes a couple of times. So I would say it's just really helpful from really a total perspective standpoint of just what's important, and then the business climate as well. So just, along those same lines, how do you see the business climate in California, just top issues that you're really focused on? And I know there you talk about homelessness and water and, affordable housing, all that. So what do you see as top of mind?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many great things here in California for our employers and our businesses. I know California often gets a bad rap as being a challenging business environment, and certainly there's reasons to justify that characterization. But there are a lot of great things here that we should be celebrating in California. We have an amazing workforce. We have an amazing education system that's the envy of many other states and countries, with our CSU and community college system and our UC system. And so we have a diversity here in California that a lot of people are looking for, and just an overall environment of innovation that people really are attracted to. So there's a lot of great things going on here for the business community, and we're certainly cheerleaders for businesses staying here in California and growing here in California. But definitely there are some public policy issues that need to be addressed to make California even better than what it already is, including the water, as you just mentioned. We are in a severe drought, and it affects all aspects of our economy. Ag, of course, is top of mind when you talk about water and drought. But other areas like our energy reliance, we can't do pumped hydro this year because of the drought. So that impacts our energy and our grid. Housing, right? We need to make sure that we have enough water for existing residents, and then building new housing, it has an impact on that. So water is certainly something that we're concerned about, and we were thrilled to see last week when the governor came out talking about his strategy to develop more supply and more storage to really kind of get us ready for the next drought, which we know is inevitable and we know ultimately will happen here in California. Homelessness is certainly something that is plaguing California. I think a lot of people are just looking for some type of change. What they're seeing on the streets with individuals who you can visibly see are suffering is not something that's acceptable to many Californians anymore, and they really want government to step in and do something about it. And we're starting to see, not only from the governor's care court proposal that's pending in the legislature to address those who are suffering from mental disabilities, but also at the local level too. Here in Sacramento, there was a lot of discussion last week about some local ballot initiatives that are being pursued by the city council and the county to really address the homeless situation and really provide some resources for these individuals so they're no longer left out on the street. But I mean, other big issues, climate change, and I mentioned housing. Our housing here in California, the housing supply is a problem. Labor and employment issues, taxation issues. There is no shortage of public policy issues that we deal with here in California that are all important to somebody.
Mm-hmm. And we hear it too from the CPA side, because a lot of your members are their clients, right? So
right.
We hear that even when I was talking to someone that supports and has a lot of clients that are in the agriculture business. And he said too, on the waterfront, he knows so much about water. I couldn't believe it. He just had a lot of different facts, but there is, we hear it too. And that's why I think when we've talked in the past about how we can collaborate, and we thought a beginning was the employee retention credit is a webinar. I can't remember. When is it?
It's this Wednesday, and I think we have close to 400 plus registrants to attend that, which is a great turnout and a great opportunity for us to partner together, utilizing each other's expertise, which is great.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I knew it was this week at some point, so thank you for that. And I know last time Jen told me, she said, we have 200, she was so excited, we have 230, now it's up to 400. So yeah, there's just many more opportunities for us to collaborate, because we do have overlap with our CPAs and the clients that they serve, and your members as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And so just on, you've seen a lot, I think, during your tenure, and especially in the last, 11 months or so. What has surprised you, I guess, the most, just overall, from your overall perspective?
I guess, some of the things that have surprised me the most, I've often said that I was somewhat naive stepping into this role in October after being with the Chamber for over 10 years and really knowing somewhat the ins and outs of the organization. Just how significant a change in a leadership role like this would have internally on the organization, despite my longevity here. It's just, when somebody new steps into the leadership position, you have different ideas and different perspectives and different priorities that you want to accomplish. And so that naturally changes the whole organization and its perspective as well. So we've been going through a lot of those changes internally. Externally, I just have a renewed appreciation, not that I didn't before, but even a greater appreciation, I should say, for the employers here in our state. I've made a conscious effort and continuing to do so to go out and meet different employers and business organizations throughout different parts of our state. We have such obviously a diverse state that things that are important to individuals and employers in Southern California may be different than the Central Valley, may be different than Northern California. And just an appreciation for what they do every single day to get up and despite some of the challenges in front of them to create the jobs that really the livelihood of California depends on, right? The whole idea of having a home here and having a family here is all built upon employers creating those opportunities. And so I'm constantly impressed by their dedication and commitment to make that happen for California.
Yeah, there's a lot out there as far as obstacles, challenges, that you're right, that the business community and CPAs too that we see as far as workforce. I know that's one initiative that we're working on, but how do we get enough workers into the pipeline to support those businesses? And we're hearing it on our side as well. So I know that's been something we've been talking to a number of businesses about and how we can help with them with filling that pipeline.
Yeah, definitely an issue for a lot of employers is not only attracting existing employees back to the workforce and growing the labor market, but what does that look like for the next 10 years on the new jobs that are being created that we may not even be aware of yet? How do we skill those individuals and make sure that our education system is creating those opportunities for students and for individuals for those future jobs?
Mm-hmm. Because I don't know, there's some statistic out there that the number of jobs today is going to turn over like 50%. You don't even realize what there is tomorrow. And we've been seeing it even with in CPA, right? In that whole curriculum, the change there and the influence of technology and AR and AI within everything that they do as well. So there's a lot of change there.
A lot of change definitely going on. Yep. And how to prepare for that is certainly a challenge.
It is. You have to keep looking, to your members and outside to make sure that you get some of those perspectives.
Definitely. So
you mentioned DE&I. I know that's top of mind for you. That's definitely top of mind for us. And we have our commission that's focused on that. And we've been working on a number of different strategic partnerships because we know that we need to leverage external resources because we can't do everything alone. So I noticed on your website that you have reference to DE&I. There's a number of initiatives you have as well. Maybe just talk to us a bit about those initiatives and what you see from kind of a legislative front regarding DE&I.
Yeah, I think, the diversity, equity, inclusion is something that a lot of our California employers have embraced, and certainly something that we have embraced as well within our organization. How you create that environment for diversity and inclusion and equity is a big project, and how do you maintain it so that it's not just this one-time discussion point, but something that you're constantly working on and constantly improving upon. And I think a lot of our employers, as I suggested, have embraced it, not just because it may be, one of the hot topics right now, but certainly they see the value in creating that diverse workforce. I was always struck by the conversation that I've heard at a lot of these conferences, that if you don't have, a unique perspective at the table as an employer, just think of that market that you're losing because you're not messaging correctly to perhaps that certain race or ethnicity because you don't have the diversity at the table to provide you with that insight. And so I think that it's not only socially a valuable thing to do, but also from a business perspective, it just makes business sense to make sure you have a diverse perspective on what you're trying to accomplish with your customer base. And so a lot of our employers are working on that. The legislation that has come out on some of these issues is interesting, and the approach that they've taken. So obviously there was law here in California to increase the number of women on corporate boards, and then they expanded that obviously to different ethnicities and races. And the manner in which it was done, ultimately the courts had issue with, and it was struck down, obviously, under the equal protection law with regards to mandating a certain number of individuals in each protected classification. It's not something, that we are opposed to with regards to trying to increase diversity here in the state or increasing those opportunities for individuals in those protected classifications, but it's just a matter of how we do it. And so from that perspective, some of the legislation that came out was penalize businesses if they didn't meet certain quotas. And certainly we think that you can provide incentives for businesses who are doing the right thing to provide them incentives to grow here in California if we really want to increase that diversity, not only at the entry-level positions for companies, but the higher management positions and ultimately the board member positions. And so I expect and I hope that we see legislation on this issue. But again, I think the approach and how you try to achieve that diversity is really important if you incentivize it versus penalizing companies in California.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's always the how is always the issue and the communication. But I know in the recent study that we've done, we showcased 70 different actionable metrics. And then within that, there's organizations that are at that place in their journey. So to your point, it kind of helps with the incentivizing to see what are the benefits other companies are seeing and how do you get there through a more positive lens than always the punitive side. Because we know that I know that never worked with my child. I'm sure always the carrot or the stick. The carrot was always the one that won out at the end of the day. Right. So we'll look forward to seeing more on kind of that positive side as we move forward. So another question I have just from your perspective is, what do you think is on the horizon that business leaders should keep an eye out for? Is there something that you think we haven't really focused on as much as we should going forward?
There's many things that businesses certainly need to be on the watch for. I think, not even from a national or international perspective, but certainly here in California as well, we have a very active legislature. And so there's always things that should be top of mind. I know most businesses and our membership are certainly worried about the economic future, whether or not we are in a recession. Are we going to be in a recession? What does that look like? And the uncertainty around that is something that all businesses are preparing for and looking at. I think the state is looking at the same situation with regards to our general fund budget and whether or not we're going to continue to enjoy these surpluses that we've had for the last few years, and whether that will ultimately turn into a deficit or not, we'll see. But it's something even the state needs to prepare for, are this economic uncertainty. And I know your members are well aware of that and are probably advising businesses with regards to the potential for a recession or even some downturn in the economy. But aside from that, the big policy issues, some of it what I've already spoken about, but climate change is, going to be an ongoing topic of discussion across nationally, but also specifically here in California. We know it is a priority for our governor, and he has recently reinforced that with his climate change package that he's just requested the legislature to advance in the next couple of weeks. So we know it's going to be an issue that businesses in California are going to have to watch for, work with, determine, how they can reduce their emissions, how they can move into more renewable energy, adopt a lot of these efforts that are being discussed at the Air Resources Board to, again, make California a cleaner environment. And so that's going to be something that all businesses are going to have to look at and have to deal with over the next several years. There's always going to be discussions about privacy here in California, data, how we deal with that, but also the advancement of technology, the discussions of how that interacts with our workforce, and in certain industries, the potential for it to replace workers, and how do we change those jobs and train those workers so they're not displaced and so that they still have jobs despite the advancement of technology. Labor and employment issues are always hot in California, and I can imagine will continue to be no matter what year it is. It's always something that's being debated at the legislature. And then, I know businesses are always concerned on the tax system here in California. We have certainly higher taxes than most of the other states. And so it's always a constant watch from employers on what could be coming and what may be coming through either the legislature or even the initiative process.
Yeah, we've had a lot of conversations with the CP, with a number of our members, and just the importance of staying up to date on those legislative issues that are there and having a voice to make sure that you have a voice, whether you're at the chapter level or at the state level, because there is so much that impacts them and the clients that they deal with. And when I think of just the perspective they have from an overall business, financial some of the operations of the businesses they support, they really have an eye for how some of those new legislation is going to impact them, especially on the tax side. We know that that's been hot over the last couple of years.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So it sounds like it's important to encourage all of our members to stay vigilant and to make sure they understand the impact of what's ahead of them.
Yeah, I think understanding it, but also, as you said, providing that critical feedback to help shape what some of those policies look like. We are always encouraging our employers to speak up and to weigh in with their elected officials, because it does have an impact. And even though, some of these issues we may oppose or we may not like, it's still important at the end of the day to look and see how we shape that legislation and that policy if it's ultimately going to go into effect here in California. And so it's really important to have as many people weigh in as possible to really shape what that policy looks like in California.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I know they listen too, because I was at a fundraiser and I said something to one of the assembly members, I'm really passionate about this. And he said, okay, if you're passionate, I'll talk to you. So yeah. It is important to have your voice be heard and to make sure you pay attention.
That's right.
That's really good advice. Just turning a little bit to you and to a little more on the personal side, leadership, because you're leading an incredibly large, significant organization. How do you define leadership and being a leader? And then what do you think are some necessary qualities that have come out of the pandemic that maybe weren't necessarily characteristics that you thought about as much as you have to think about today, because the world's been kind of turned upside down?
Yeah. Leadership, I think, is something that you can't just demand. You can't demand that people look at you as a leader or treat you as a leader. It's something that you have to deliver through how you act and how you interact with individuals, the confidence you provide. You have to deliver your strategy and your vision in a way that makes people want to join you to be a leader. And so if nobody's following you, it's hard to characterize yourself as a leader. And so it really does depend upon whether or not you're able to basically get individuals to follow you and follow your vision and your perspective. And that's what I think really defines a leader. It may not be the loudest person in the room. And certainly I can tell you I'm not the smartest person in the room all the time, but it's somebody who will bring people along and can create kind of that coalition of support for a specific mission or perspective or strategy. And so I really think those are key qualities of a leader and something that I've certainly learned over time. Things that I have that I'm constantly thinking about now that I probably wasn't necessarily before is just personal well-being of employees, because everybody obviously went through it during the pandemic and everybody had their different challenges. I have 2 children that are teenagers, and my experience with them going through remote school was different than somebody who had a toddler or maybe a child in grade school. And so, everybody was going through different experiences and challenges. And so I think there's a level of sensitivity to individuals' personal well-being that wasn't necessarily there before, and making sure that, not just the work environment is good, but, that they don't need accommodations for personal issues that they may be dealing with as well. I think that is a good thing that came out of COVID, that we're all a little bit more sensitive to each other's personal challenges and their ultimate well-being. And that's something that I think has definitely changed. I also think flexibility is just a new value that everybody has embraced. And I think it's going to continue to have a dramatic effect on our workforce. I can say that there is a majority of our members who still are either fully remote or in a hybrid situation. And I think that's something that's going to stick around for a while, because people really value that flexibility with their personal time and their professional time.
Mm-hmm. No, the flexibility, the empathy, just trying to understand where everyone's coming from, because everyone's in a different position. Even during COVID, to your point, everyone was dealing with something different, and you had to kind of understand that. And I feel like before it was more one size fits all. We're going to all do this. And to me, having the flexibility, I think you can bring more of yourself to work and be more productive and present if you really feel you're in a good place and you're not worried about, I have to get here, I have to get there. I know I can be here at now, and then I can go pick my kids up at school or be at a baseball game, right? And that used to not be, because kind of frowned upon, right?
That's right.
So
yeah, I think that's a huge benefit from the pandemic.
It is. There's some good points for sure. Just out of curiosity, so what are you dealing with from everybody always wants to know a hybrid schedule at the chamber? Are you coming in? Are you not? What's your
Right now we're on a 2-day a week in the office, and we will be transitioning to 3 days in the office in the early fall. And I think that'll be the max. I think the max will be back in the office is 3 days a week with 2 remote. And we're going to do somewhat of a unique situation just based upon our own business calendar. We have, as I mentioned, our operations side that works on all of our compliance products. And so there's a certain part of the year where they're extremely busy because of new laws that have gone into effect, or the new year where you need new products. And so they'll be here in the office for 3 days, but likely be, given a few months where they only have to be here 2 days a week to provide that flexibility. And then similarly with our advocacy team that works over with the legislature, certainly when the legislature is in session, they have to be here more days, but during the fall where they're not in session, they'll have a little bit more flexibility with coming into the office and really trying to, again, create that balance, because what everybody noticed too is you want to maintain some level of culture and personal interaction with your employees. And so we want to make sure we protect that, but we also want to be sensitive to flexibility as well.
Mm-hmm. That's interesting. You're doing something that's really specific to your organization.
Right.
Yeah.
And we'll see if it works. And if we need to change it, we will, but we're going to keep trying to find that right fit where we have a good balance of in-person, but also the flexibility that we know our employees want.
That's interesting. Where I was at before, I did something that I did a sabbatical. So I said, basically come in 1 day a week, and then there's a month or two, you have a sabbatical and you can choose where you want to work and when, if you come in at all, so it was really being flexible to the business. And that's what the business needs were. So I think at the end of the day, that's what everyone's going to be doing. It's going to look different, and we'll see what works.
Yeah, we'll see what works.
We
keep working on it.
Yep. So one last question for you, and what lessons or advice, would you share with others? Because you see all sorts of businesses and you talk with international, national, state individuals. What advice could you give I'm sure there's a lot, but a couple to our listeners?
Oh, there's so many things I could provide. One of the biggest things I will say in just my own journey and in talking with other leaders is you have to trust your instincts and really listen to that voice that you keep hearing in your head and really go with it. And sometimes it's just a gut check where you can just know where something is right, and you know what I mean, what you have to do. And certainly when I transitioned over from my work as an attorney to my journey as a lobbyist, it was based totally on instinct. And look how far it has led me in this journey to now leading the California Chamber of Commerce, which is just a great opportunity. So I think that is one thing that I would pass on to anyone who is starting off on their career, is to trust your instincts. And then, always embrace the opportunities that are in front of you without any doubts. Don't let those voices of doubt kind of hit you and discourage you from moving forward. I think all of our businesses, were experiencing those doubts when they were faced with hurdles during the pandemic, and whether or not they were going to be able to ultimately survive. And despite those challenges, they continue to persevere ahead. And so I think you have to ignore some of those doubts that unquestionably get in the way of all of us sometimes, and really persevere with what you're committed to and the opportunities ahead. So those are two things that I would say I certainly have utilized in my own journey, and know that others have as well.
I like that. Trust your instincts, and sometimes don't concentrate on the doubts, because they do get in the way sometimes. And when you focus on those, you become kind of immobile, where you can't move forward.
That's right.
Yeah. That's great advice. Great advice. Well, with that, I think we're at time, but I really appreciate you taking time to be with us today. Thank you to, CalChamber for everything you do for the business communities, and then to our partnership. I look forward to continuing to work with the Chamber. And again, I'll plug June 1st. I don't know if it's June 1st this year, but is it June 1st in 2023?
No, it'll probably be different dates, but we appreciate it. We'll send out the dates as we get closer for our Capital Summit and Host Breakfast.
Excellent. Yeah, it's a great event. So if you haven't gone, I'd encourage anyone listening to go. So thank you again, Jennifer.
Thank you, Denise.
Really appreciate you and the partnership.
Same. We look forward to working with you.
This episode was recorded on August 15th, prior to the Employee Retention Credit Update webinar mentioned in the podcast. To watch the webcast on demand, visit calcpa.org. Rise and Stride is produced by the California Society of Certified Public Accountants. To learn more, visit calcpa.org.